Welcome back. This is Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Senator Ledama Olekina is with me in studio, also in his company. Nyangori Ohenjo, the CEO of Semirite, and Nelson Koech, MP representing Belgood constituency, as well as the chair of the Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee of the National Assembly. Let's now turn our attention to what President William Ruto yesterday touted as the reforms in the healthcare system in the country, and also the housing project, which he said is a cornerstone to the country's development. The Affordable Housing Bill 2023 is now in the Senate, and the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation and Housing is now inviting comments by Thursday this week, the 29th of February, 5 p.m. And we'll be taking a look at the changes in the bill and some sections of the bill which was passed by the National Assembly. Coming to you, Honorable Nelson Koech, seems that this is one of the pillar projects of the state as outlined in its administration. But I wonder why it apparently is in contrast with the manifesto by the Kenya Kwanza before the elections, and which at the time had proposed a modest contribution capped at 3,000 Kenya shillings per household each month. Which imposed rather at the time had not the current proposal of what we are being deducted in terms of contribution to the housing levy, but in opposite contrast of the manifesto that you made before the elections when you sought the mandate of the Kenyan people. And how will this significantly turn around the country's crisis in terms of the housing projects?
Affordable Housing Bill 2023. First of all, let me just say that all these people that you've been seeing, we've been watching, campaigning against the affordable housing, particularly those from the opposition, were missing on the floor of the House last Thursday and Tuesday when we took the vote. In fact, it was 151 against 58 votes from those who were opposed to it. Those people who had very strong views against the proposed bill were missing on the floor of the House. On Thursday, there was a walkout from a section of members from the opposition. Some decided to stay in. Professor Seme, for instance, was on the floor of the House with very rich amendments to the bill. Let me tell you, Ayub, affordable housing globally, first of all, it's anchored in the Constitution. Article 43 of our Constitution demands that such affordable housing and access to health and affordable housing is a right. The only way that, and this is the government that has worked his manifesto, has walked the talk, we have to provide affordable housing to the people that do not have housing. Now, when a section of people went to court, the court pronounced itself. Actually, the court, what it was doing was to provide a comprehensive legal framework to assist on this project. And one of them was on levying of 1.5% of gross salary, particularly for those who are employed. And it was of the view, it was of the view of the court that it was discriminatory, since at that point before introducing this amendment, it was only meant to be for those who are employed. Now it has come to 1.5% of both those who are employed, gross salary of those who are employed and those who are not employed. We're giving the discretion again to the Minister of Finance on who should pay that 1.5% for those who are not unemployed, which is extremely perfect. Now, this Affordable Housing Fund and management of it and other legal frameworks that are there is quite a detailed bill that has closed all the gaps that had been raised, and even the people and even the management. You'll find now that in this bill, the management is going to be outside the peers of housing and the peers of finance. The rest are go to FKE, I don't know, and all these other frameworks. So it's become so much detail. But let me not deal on the gist and the meat of what the bill contains, but what it is for this country that is going to happen. It is an economic boom. It will change so many lives of so many young people to get into development, unlike you had.
However, coming to your manifesto, because it's the question of accountability and given that you have the mandate of the Kenyan people that you attained on the 9th of August, your manifesto, however, the Kenya Kwanza plan, does not mention the imposition of the 1.5% levy on people's monthly salaries.
When you've come in and you've looked at it, and I'm sure from when we sit, you look at it from that perspective, is what we had proposed in our manifesto, what is going to be realistic for us to develop 250,000 units per year. It might not be realistic. So, I mean, it's then for that reason that the government can decide as well to impose a 1.5%, which I think, in my own view, is extremely reasonable in terms of what we are looking at to achieve. So I think manifesto and what we are doing here is perfectly synchronized. It's aligned. It's the same thing. We're just talking about different percentages, small, minimal percentage and changes.
Because it never mentioned, I mean, not minimal, Honorable Coach, it never mentioned. And the question is then, did you not understand at the time, did you not do an economic recce of the situation then at the time? And you had the best of advisors in terms of the economy, the likes of David Ndii, and CS Njuguna Ndung'u at the time, who wasn't. And very many, Kamau Thuge. I mean, did they not provide specific scope of the economic reality then? Because this manifesto is a coming together of ideas, and then you presented that to the Kenyan people, but doesn't mention the 1.5% levy, which you thereafter impose when you attain power from the people.
You must remember that our manifesto is based on consultation. It's based on what people gave to this, to Kenya Kwanza. It's based on the forums that we had in every county and what people wanted. One of them was affordable housing. Now, these are the mechanics of making sure that it succeeds. And one of them, you see, what we had before was the amendment of Employment Act 2007, and which the court had a problem with it. And that is why we came now with this affordable housing bill to cure all the inconsistencies and all the gaps that, in the view of the court, were not proper and did not have a proper legal backing and mechanism. That is what we've introduced. But looking at it in terms of employment, it's huge. Let's be very honest. And I heard even my colleague from Ruto saying that the rate of crime in Ruto has gone down because so many people are observed. Look at the spiral effect of the constructions that are happening. You've seen the president visiting different construction sites. You've seen the number of people. You've seen even young people have come out to demonstrate when the court injected this housing fund. It is massive. From construction, from the people who are going to do the construction, from the young people who are going to be employed, for the plumbers who are going to be taken, for the electricians who are going to be employed, the young people out there who are going to be put into employment. I can tell you for sure, this is one place where it is going to expand our tax base. This is one place where young people are going to be employed, and this is one place that is going to boost our economy.
We'll talk about employment because the housing project isn't the only avenue available for the government, but also other economic indicators. Coming to you, Henjo, how do you, from what lens do you view all these developments and the balance of the proportion around those who are for it, those who are against it? In the end, a noble idea, but many question the timing and also the economic status of Kenyans.
Yeah, that is very true. Timing, economic status, and of course the whole question of is it just burdensome? You know, are we in a situation here? It's a noble idea, yes, as Mheshimiwa is saying. However, how is it being executed? Is it being executed in a way that it balances everyone's interests? Looking at the whole question of housing is really a complex issue within the Kenyan context, because one of the things, and the arguments have been here, that especially for those ones who are employed, for those ones who are being taxed directly, do they really, you know, what is their stake after contributing 1%? And this is gross, not on the net, yeah?
Yeah.
It's on gross.
It's on gross, yeah.
And now combine these with all the other taxations. Most of these people are on almost 30% and above payee, yeah? So you add this burden, and there's so many other issues of health, issues of education that I have to take into consideration. So yes, we are creating employment, but aren't we in the same vein then disempowering those we are taxing? Now we're bringing in the informal people. It's not yet very clear to some of us how you are going to, superimand, to prefect that taxation for those ones who are in the informal sector. Because for those ones who are in the formal sector, it's at the pay point. For those ones who are in the formal sector, how is that taxation going to take effect? At what level are you going to determine this gross income for the mama mboga who is selling the mbogas in the market? So for you to get the 1.5%. Much has been said. I think it goes without saying that housing is a basic human right, and any government, of course, is required, has a responsibility to ensure that its citizens are properly housed. I think, for me, the whole issue here is the strategy. Yeah. Are we using the proper strategy? Have we canvassed the different strategies that will be available to ensure that Kenyans who do not have housing are able to access affordable housing in a way that does not mean to overburden a section of the society? For instance, some people have suggested, wouldn't there have been an opportunity to probably use the private-public partnerships model in this, where you have private sector coming in to finance this? Okay. Yeah.
How would then that take the pinch point over the squeezed pay slips of Kenyans if the private sector was fully involved?
If the private sector would be fully involved, for instance, what we're saying here is that you have private sector source for financing outside the Kenyan pay slips. Get funding opportunities from outside our pay slips. And then when these houses are sold, they recoup. And this is happening in other countries, like I think Namibia, where the private sector is working with government directly to ensure that houses are being produced at the rate that they're supposed to be produced and being sold off to those who deserve those houses. And that means that you still do not affect the employment issue, because if you want 250,000 units, and you have the private sector that has pulled the resources together, you still have those people who are employed being employed through that model. Okay. Yeah.
Senator Olekina, yes. Now at the Senate, and I'm looking at Section 7 of the bill, and which now has been changed or amended. The initial penalty proposed that a 3% of the unpaid amount of the housing levy for each month in default. Now, the bill at the Senate provides that the levy will now be a tax debt and penalized according to the Tax Procedures Act of 2015. Seems there are still minefields that you have to tread at the Senate.
Let me begin, first of all, by demystifying this issue of the need for housing in Kenya. Do we need affordable housing in Kenya? Absolutely, yes. Do we have a problem? Yes. If you look at, in this country, the statistics that I have is that about 6.4 million Kenyans live in informal settlement. About 60% of residents of Nairobi live in slums. So is it a problem? Yes, it is a problem. Do we have a solution to that? Absolutely. And the solution we have is in county governments, not in national governments. If you look at the framers of the Constitution, devolved the issue of housing. And where the National Assembly erred in the beginning is that, first of all, they never sought concurrence on the bill. And that is still going to be a hurdle. It doesn't matter how they look at it. It doesn't matter how they try to resolve it by sending it to the Senate. You've got the Article 110(3) of the Constitution define the need for concurrence. They have to look at both houses, the National Assembly and the Senate must concur on the bill. So that is the first hurdle. What is the second hurdle? in this bill, if you look at the proposed taxation of the gross, not even the net, that is a huge burden when it comes to the issue of this bill. Number 3, my brother has talked about it here. You are now taxing people who are unemployed. You know, how do you dare go tax people who are unemployed for you to be able to provide housing for them? You know, I think it's completely ill-advised. And to tell you the truth, I believe that actually what is happening is that this bill is being advanced by people who've got interest, people who have already won the tenders for constructing those houses. It is not because the current administration want to resolve the housing crisis in this country. The only way that we can resolve the housing crisis in this country is by trying to deter this rural-urban migration or county to the city migration. We need to be able to empower our counties. We need to be able to figure out, sit down with the assemblies of each and every county. And in each and every year, budget. If you go to a county like Narok, for instance, we generate almost 3 billion shillings from the Masai Mara Game Reserve. What stops the county government of Narok on the assembly by sitting down and saying 1 billion shillings, we will build houses? And they actually build affordable housing. You know, houses can be built. You can build a 3-bedroom house by 1.3 million shillings to 1.5 million shillings when you have the ideas to do that. I think what is happening is that we are so greedy, we just want to get all the money we can get, and we are forgetting about the future of this country. If we simply just use prefabs, if we are setting up affordable housing, we can be able to decongest the city. Nairobi is over-congested. There are no parkings. So we've got a lot of serious problems when it comes to this issue of this bill. You know, there's also another issue of stigmatization, which people are not looking at it. You know, and these are some of the things that we're going to be able to bring out. The bill is saying they are giving priority to marginalized groups, including disabled people. So you want to tell me there'll be a unit just for disabled? You know, you're stigmatizing. You know, instead of enabling these people, you're just saying we're giving priority to marginalized people, which includes disabled people and also, people who live in the slums. And mind you, this country, for, different administration, have always come up with this issue of affordable housing. But who ends up occupying those houses? Are rich people. You know, you will be shocked. When you go to the Ministry of Housing, the people who get access to those houses are people who can be able to afford. So are we getting this thing wrong? Absolutely. Absolutely wrong. Given what you have said, Senator Olekina, and the coalition party to which you belong also sought the mandate of the Kenyan people, but you never won. Had you won the elections, how different would you have done? Because you accept the reality that the country must address its housing crisis. What's the formula that you would have applied? That's the right question to ask. The formula that I believe would have been able to arise on is a formula that enabled devolution to continue thriving. Number one, we would have gone to each and every county, just like I said, and ensure that we work with the assemblies to set aside a certain amount of their budget. There's a lot of money that goes to waste. There's a lot of travel money. If the president was telling me that there'll be no travel so that that budget can be set aside to be able to build affordable housing, and not concentrating them in Nairobi, but actually going into each and every county and helping people. Kenyans have their homes. Kenyans have their rural homes. The only time that you'll know somebody has a rural home is when that person is dead. Because one way or the other, even if they live in Nairobi, they'll be ferried back to their homes. So why not build their homes? Why not build the infrastructure in their home? Today, as I speak here, if you go to Narok County as an example, Transmara, you go to Kilgoris, there is a complete area where infrastructure, electric posts have collapsed. No one cares about it because it's rural. Why do we need to talk about rural anymore? Yet those areas are overpopulated now. They are no longer places which have been set aside to grow food for this country. If, let's say, for instance, Kenya Power and rural electrification cared about Transmara, they would go to an area called El Meshuki today. In fact, it is neighboring where the president lives. He has a house there. If you go there, a whole street, the electric poles have fallen. If we cared about the population in this country, and not just a makeshift population that comes to live in the urban area, we will then not ever have that problem. we will build Narok County as an example, Nakuru County as an example, even where my brother comes from, Kericho County as an example. There's a lot of abandoned land. There's a lot of abandoned land. Why not go sit down with the youth and say, okay, we want to build new cities? If you go to America as an example, you know, there are new cities that crops up all the time. If you go to Texas as an example, in the rural part of Texas is no longer rural because new cities are emerging, you know, which are state-based.
Okay.
The problem we have here is not only that hustlers will now have to pay 1.5% of their gross fee, the mamamboga, the boda, already overtaxed people, you're already overtaxing them.
Okay.
For me, I completely disagree with this affordable housing model. I think that if we are given an opportunity, we can be able to prove to this country that we can provide better leadership in terms of coming up with affordable housing.
All right. Honorable Coach, I'll come to you briefly. You talked about the question of failure on the part of also the provision of energy, which is a determinant factor in production. And the Auditor General in a report revealed consumers, Kenyans, have been overcharged by as much as 4 shillings and 4 cents per unit monthly from January 2018 to date. And Kenyans have mathematically therefore paid 70.35 billion in exaggerated power bills in 5 years between 2018 and 2023. Isn't this concerning? You are
It is.
So is Honorable
It is. It
I mean, what are you leaders then doing for the Kenyan people when we have such damning reports from the Auditor General and other independent officers, and which will I face the eyesight of Kenyans as to how there is failure on the part of those who are at the policy positions to address challenges faced by the Kenyan people?
Let me tell you, if William Ruto wanted to solve the problem of lack of accountability in this country, if he wanted to solve the problem of such audit queries being raised, he would have overhauled the entire energy sector, the complete energy sector, but not bring its friends to be able to run the sector, friends who do not even respect Parliament when they're summoned to appear before Parliament. You know, if you look at, I'll give you statistics here, and these are just from my own county as an example, and we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about provision of healthcare, we're talking about energy. If you go to, like, let's say, in Emuru Dikit alone, if you go to Siriat Primary School, Cheboi, Kuresoi, Cheramgoi, Tuyobei, Chebugei, Chagina, I don't know how to pronounce the names, Chania Primary, Chelani, all those have got no power. And you're talking about affordable housing. Solve the first problem. Go to Kilgoris. You go to Karda Primary, Nyasita Primary, Oltumaroi, Kikata Primary, Erekoi Primary, Hill Spring Primary, Kapune Primary, Olgoso Sopia Primary, Mpata Market, Nkopia Primary, Mosiro Primary. Okay. No electricity in all those areas. So you ask me how I feel about it. I feel that the complete energy sector ought to be completely overhauled.
Okay. Yes, Honorable Kwech.
First, let me correct where my colleague Senator is saying that Mamamboga will be taxed equally. And they're going to be levied 1.5%. It was of the view, the court's view, that it was discriminatory.
Against salaried Kenyans.
Against salaried Kenyans. Mm-hmm. And that is why now with the new bill, it is proposing that the discretion will be of the CS Treasury to say who should not and who should pay from those that are unemployed. So that discretion was given. Number two...
But Honorable Kwech, how will an unemployed Kenyan pay tax?
Let me ask you, there are so many Kenyans there who are running their own businesses. There are people who are running their own shops. There are people who are running their own hotels. There are people who are running different other businesses who are self-employed and are able to pay. Those ones then should be able to pay. We must expand.
That then requires, Honorable Kwech, just a due diligence process by KRA to bring into the bracket and
so many agencies.
Those Kenyans.
Yes.
I'm talking for the unemployed Kenyans who have no income at all.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. The CS Treasury has been given that discretion to determine who should and who should not. Okay. Number two is on the issue of which Senator was talking about. It should be between the counties and not the national government projects. In the new bill as well, that one has been catered for. There's going to be consultation between the county governments and the national government on how this program shall be executed. So I can tell you from where we have actually filled all the gaps. It is before the Senate, And I'm sure he's going to socialize with it, and he will realize that all the questions that he's raised are perfectly addressed in this bill that we had.
I disagree.
Just hang on. I'll give you the
on the final issue of the energy sector. The energy sector, let me tell you, actually, and I agree with Adama Olekina, there was a lot of mismanagement. Last mile connectivity project, like he's raised the issue of Emuru Adigir on behalf of member of parliament from Emuru Adigir, but I think it has been totally mismanaged. We had almost dysfunctional Kenya Power. For the first time, when this administration has come in, it has posted a positive and a profit of more than 315 million Kenya shilling. That is positive. That alone tells you that there is confidence and something is being done right. That should allow then the connectivity of areas that do not have power. We sat in our last PG when we had the meeting in Naivasha between the executive, counties, and the national government. We've agreed on how to address all these issues of power and last mile rollout projects from areas that have not benefited from the same. And going forward, you will see a lot of activity geared towards that, because we've received, and this shuttle diplomacy, economic diplomacy that the president has been doing is actually bearing fruit, because we've received a lot of donation from donors to come and do last mile connectivity and continue in energy rollout in our rural areas. So those are things that shortly will be catered for. So it is upon Senator Olekina's members of parliament from that county to come forward and make sure that that issue is addressed by them, because that's the only way. Look, for instance, in Belgut constituency, where I come from, and you can check, I am almost at 89% connectivity. Because of sustained, and you know, as a member of parliament, it's not just about sitting. It's also hustling. Because
I agree.
The cake, everyone demands this cake, the national cake. So if you are not out there demanding for your people, then you won't get it. So what is it? Why is it that I'm at 89% and you find another member of parliament is probably at 20%? It tells you something is not being done right. And that is when, even if you look at the video, the clip where the president seemed to have been, mad at us, he was simply saying, you guys are members of parliament. You have the responsibility. You pass budget. When you're allocating budget, why don't you allocate it enough for us to roll out last mile connectivity?
Okay, and besides the lobbying that parliamentarians ought to do, Honorable Koech, Senator Olekina and Ohenjo, you agree with me that it's a right for Kenyans to get services, not a privilege, is it?
But also, it's why are we elected as members? Why are we elected as people?
Three major roles: representation, legislation, oversight.
Representation is telling Kenya Power that so-and-so primary school does not have power. I want you to connect it. Raise it on the floor of the House. Align it with the budget. That is how it works.
Let me put it this way.
Okay,
you've asked
the account of Ohenjo, Senator Olekina. Yes, please.
Okay. A number of issues here. One, the whole question of housing that we're still speaking to, and listening. One thing comes to mind, and there's agreement. Yes, there's need for housing. I think for me, strategy is then the issue. How do you go about strategy? We are talking about accession here. And you'll agree with me, Senator, when you look at currently, Senator here talked about people in the rural homes. And when you look at the cost of construction materials, because of taxation, because of the power thing, the cost of construction is very high. And probably that is why you have so many people without housing. You have so many slums. Now, we are doing affordable housing, and that is the question here. For who?
Exactly.
For Kenyans.
Which Kenyans? Because if we have people in slums, is somebody in Kibra going to afford 1.5 million house once it's complete? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. If I'm in employment, probably what I need is a mortgage for me to put up my own unit at an affordable cost. So why should I be taxed, to construct a house, to be bought by who? That is the question. Who is supposed to buy this house? It's affordable, yes. I have means, if supported by government, to put up my own unit if need be. And that means, looking at the taxation regime.
Very good.
To make sure that the materials for construction, right from electricity to, fuel and things like that, come down. But if I'm being taxed, I earn 50,000 shillings, I'm being taxed to construct affordable housing, and they're being constructed somewhere on Thika Road. How am I benefiting by the end of the day? I think that is the biggest question that, as we look at the bill, we need to address. Who is going to buy these houses? Who are they for? Okay. The end product. Who is supposed to buy them? And if they're buying them from what income? Because if the people do not have income to construct the houses in the first place, okay, what income will they then use to buy these houses? Otherwise, we end up with white elephant projects. Now, when it comes to issues of electricity and things like that, it's very true. Mm-hmm. This is a right. And yes, one of the responsibilities of legislators is to budget. But I think we also need to make sure that legislators budget to make sure that areas that have not been covered by budget, and that is why we have affirmative action. Yes. Article 56. There are communities here who probably are not even represented in Parliament. There are communities here who are not even represented in the Senate. Who will speak for them? If members of Parliament will speak for their people, then who will speak for these ones who are unrepresented?
And who are Kenyans.
And who are Kenyans.
Who are these?
So what we need is a framework that will be put in place to ensure that from whatever corner of the country that you are, affirmative action processes and frameworks are put in place so that you don't have to have a member of Parliament. You just have to work within a framework, identify these issues. These issues are covered under the affirmative action. We've had the Equalization Fund, for instance. Okay. Actually, Equalization Fund could have been used for some of these things, housing infrastructure and stuff like that, but it's been missed, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Senator.
Let me first of all agree with my brother here. It behooves each and every member of Parliament to be able to lobby for their people. But I want to give you a practical example. Every so often, we go and lobby, and we are told, oh, we don't have a budget. Oh, we will put it in the budget next year. And then those heads of those state departments end up giving contracts to their brothers, to their family members, to their cronies, and then those projects are not completed. How do you explain, as an example, why is it that in the whole of Emurue Dikir and Kilgoris, there's never stability when it comes to electricity? Every evening, electricity goes off. There's no electricity whatsoever. Now, you talk about the issue of insecurity. In Transmara, we have a constant problem when it comes to the issue of the border of Enoratet, okay, where two clans are fighting. That is fueled by the fact that when these clans, one clan decides to attack another clan, they take advantage of the darkness because there's no electricity. That is number one. How do you explain the insecurity in Chamus, in Baringo? My brother talks about people who are not represented and the fact that we have to represent everybody. I was in Ilchamus the other day. One lady stood up and said, I am from the Turkana community. But whenever we leave Turkana and we come to Kenya, because Turkana is no longer Kenya, Turkana is just a country of its own. Whenever I leave Turkana to come to Kenya, there is insecurity. People are, but when you go to that county, it is completely dark. Nobody is there to be able to support. But Samburu, we just lost an MCA, which is very, very sad because of the issue of insecurity. Why not try, instead of focusing on this issue of saying affordable housing, thinking big, yet you cannot solve small problems, small issues, it behooves every member of this parliament, both National Assembly and the Senate, to be able to advocate for the entire country and not just their own small country. You talked about the issue, my brother talked about the issue of him being at 89%, and then Emurue Dikir MP being at 20% when it comes to the issue of electricity. It talks about priorities. At least his priority here is to ensure that the people of Belgut have got power. And he pushes it. He's the chairperson of the Foreign Relations Committee. So he's got that clout that he can be able to push with it. So I believe I agree with my brother when he says that what we need to do is to have a system, a check and balance system, where you check and say, affordable housing, give us a status of Baringo County, give us a status of the counties that are in the dark, you know, because there are counties here that unless somebody comes out there and speak for them, nobody will ever speak for them, you know. So this issue of affordable housing, the issue of healthcare, basic healthcare, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about the issue of healthcare, it is only going to be skewed based on where there's interest. Everything to do with any piece of legislation being passed in this country has got already commercial interest.
Thank you.